Welcome to Ology of a Black Woman. If you are new here, this is a mini series where I'm doing a personal study into my identity and different topics around my experiences as a Black woman as I am going through my early 20s. For the past few weeks, my personal study has been focused on representation and just the presence that I want to have in any room that I enter as a Black woman. And so now I have put together the things that I want to share based on this segment of this topic. So, why has representation been on my mind lately? That's the first thing I want to talk about. There was a video on TikTok that went viral of a Black medical student who posted her stats, and they were pretty below average. And by stats, I mean the test scores and GPA that got her into medical school. They were pretty below average. And she posted them speaking about how I would say like how those things did not stop her from getting into medical school. And I assume it was posted to be in a motivating way, but the internet did get catch hold of it and it did go viral. And a lot of people found that video and left comments about this being a sign that DEI initiatives were like stupid kind of thing and letting people into the field who were otherwise unqualified. And like that video aside, it started a conversation on kind of what would be appropriate to post and to speak on and uplift in this climate because it was later found that this person also did like a post back that boosted her GPA. And, that's something that people commonly do to increase their chances of getting into school. And there were some individuals who would like stitch it and comment and say, like, maybe she should have painted the full picture of what got her into school, especially considering the current political climate and the amount of anti-DEI rhetoric kind of floating around social media. So that left me to think, okay, how do I feel about this situation? Do I feel like there is a standard to uphold in the way that we represent ourselves and not becoming and not doing a disservice to other Black Americans, if that's what that would be? And on the other end of things, I've been considering, okay, maybe authenticity is the best answer. And, having conversations, like real conversations, shouldn't be censored, like beyond medicine, just in general, shouldn't be censored and shouldn't be like hindered by respectability politics. Because at the end of the day, like people have been calling Black professionals DEI hires, even if they, have the highest scores in the world. People have said that Black people are taking up spots and are only in certain places because of affirmative action forever. So it also made me think, okay, like, is my idea of representation being kind of warped because I'm also considering how I present myself and present myself and how that is taken in by people who are not Black Americans and may not fully understand the picture of my story, but will still speak on it, especially with racist undertones. So that is what like first led me here. I would say some of the other things that have tied into this study have also been just seeing how much culture was shaped by like I don't even know the word for it. Like, okay, so the Epstein files have been released. Different things have come out to show that like these people that are in positions of power have been like shaping a lot of culture towards ways that like exploit women sexually, right? And abuse women sexually. And it's made me like have this huge like moment where I'm like, whoa, has have these different phases of like what looks like empowerment for women just been, I don't know, a scheme set up to just bring about like a norm of us presenting our body in certain ways. Like, I hope that makes sense. But like, say, for example, pink being like with Victoria's Secret and like feeling like, oh, this is like, underwear that'll make me feel cute, like as a teen, whatever. This is something made for teens, made for young adults. And then it's like, wait a minute, this is kind of odd that we're having like a lingerie company market like underwear to teens and young adult women. So, anyways, that's kind of the second piece. And all of that has brought me back to a question of how do I want to represent myself? And do I think there are right and wrong ways for other people to be representing themselves as Black women as well? Because a lot of these things that happen culturally turn into conversations, beyond the first person who brings it up. So like I'm also wondering what would a liberated self feel like, and how does that tie into the influence that I would have on others and the influence that others have on me. So the foundational idea for today or today's episode is the first revolutionary act a Black woman can undertake is control over her body and presence. And I came up with this foundational idea tying in, these thoughts I've had around representation and presence, and also considering the fact that we really haven't had a very long time historically where we have been so in control of our bodies and the way we present ourselves, but also we have so much access to education about, what these previous norms have been and how they were shaped. And we're able to have like an awareness of what we're doing in real time as well, I think. But, that also comes with its limitations, but that's the foundational idea. The directing questions for myself have been what is true body empowerment and what is an illusion to feeling empowered in my body and in the way that I present myself. Number two, how have I limited or embraced my aesthetic presence as a Black woman? So that goes into more so norms around beauty and around what I consider beauty norms and things like that. Number three, is all representation good? And if I am defining good as empowerment based on my understanding of Black feminism. So not only like is all representation good, but how am I defining what good even is? Welcome to the Media Lab for this episode. First up, we have Ain't She Still a Woman? And that was written by Bell Hooks. The takeaway from this article for me was just Hooks emphasizing the fact that Black women are often being told to fit into certain boxes in any spaces we enter. And a lot of people will expect us to conform to these boxes, to become what they want us to see in these spaces, which is often silent and agreeable to whatever they are putting on the floor. And by they, I mean men or, you know, white people. But my takeaway from this was that I really just don't want to go through life being what other people want me to be, especially those who create the standards for me based on racist and sexist viewpoints. I don't want that. So I'm really working on just living in defiance of that. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to be, you know, in these like positions, in these roles and be, the same professional person and that I am the same person who is doing good work and things like that. I just want to be present in a way that is not dictated by others. The other article is That's Not Me I See on TV. African American Youth Interpret Media Images of Black Females. This was a study conducted across different institutions. And the goal of the study was to determine how African American youth perceived images of Black women in popular media. And the interesting thing for me is that a lot of youth, when they were presented, I can't remember exactly what they were, my apologies, but they were presented some images that were over sexualized. Like I believe one of them was Sierra's magazine cover, where perhaps like she wasn't topless, but she was like covering a piece of herself. And the kids were like, whoa, like kind of why like taken aback, I would say. And they were like, this seems like too sexual of a representation for us, right? Right. And this is not me putting in my 2 cents to say whether or not their takeaways are correct or wrong or to put Sierra on blast, okay? Obviously. But this is to say that I do think it's really important for youth to have representation that they can look up to. And, I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and I was talking about how like WAP got really popular at one point in time. And a lot of parents were like, oh, like kids, like this is crazy that this song is even a thing, da 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 da. And I think the song was a banger. But I do think, maybe it was crazy for me to be singing that song as a minor. But it was a vibe, it was a bop, you know what I'm saying? That's not to say songs like that shouldn't be produced. I think we are seeing media that is made for youth and for individuals who, are younger or maybe don't want that type of media. We're seeing that dwindle, I feel like, and not get as much focus, which is not the problem of people producing those type of media. It is a problem of, having adequate funding left for other projects, in my opinion. So that is why, I mean, that's my takeaway from this article and what has inspired, my own thoughts around how I want to present myself and the type of like representation I want to be. Because I do think there's a place for a variety of representation. I love Cardi B down. I'm honestly glad that I listened to her first few songs. I've been with her since she dropped Forever. Okay. But I can see how there is a need for additional representation because like kids should have things catered towards and they shouldn't just be coming across stuff that's too grown for them. Anyways, next is Mammy, Jezebel, Sapphire, and their homegirls developing an oppositional gaze toward the images of Black women. This is a paper that goes over these, three caricatures of Black women that have perpetuated the way we are represented, historically and present day. So this was good for me to read just to recenter on my understanding of the state of representation historically and currently. And I think this is a good read. If you've never heard of these terms and you're a Black woman, you definitely should look into them. And another movie that's not on here that I think is such a good um, commentary on like representation in media is Hollywood Shuffle by Robert Townsend. That is one of my favorite movies, and I think it also has a good discussion on like this, talks on representation because it's following him as an actor pursuing different roles in Hollywood. So of course you come across these stereotypical roles and things like that, and the movie serves as like a commentary. Next is What's in a Name? Womanism, Black Feminism, and Beyond. This article, I had not heard of it before, and I had made this Google spreadsheet of a bunch of like Black feminist and womanist texts that I wanted to read across that I built based like on what's it called, syllabi from different college courses, and this was on it. I did not know what to expect, but basically, it's breaking down differences between womanism, Black feminism, and the ways that we categorize different movements and different ways that we have certain discussions on the experiences of Black women, which I think overall, my takeaway was just that representation and the way that we go about categorizing and naming our movements and naming ourselves even, it's just going to be a long process. It has been a long process. So I don't think there's any concrete answers that I'm expecting to have right now on this, but I do know directions that I want to go in. And I also appreciate that as we learn new things, as we come across new ways that we can be represented, as we come across different intersecting identities and what they mean for Black women, even within the diversity of what, of who are Black women. I think it's really important to always be open to continuously learning and not forming a like static definition of self, but being prepared for dynamic definitions that are still informed. Next, we have Queens of the Universe, a poem written by Sonia Sanchez, which I'm just going to read like the first piece of it because I feel like it tied in so well the basis of this video. It says, "We Black women have been called many things: foxes, matriarch whores, bougie bitches, sweet mamas, black bitches, sapphires, sisters, and recently queens. I would say that Black women best have been a combination of all them words, because if we examine our past history at one time or another, we've had to be like them words be saying." So I think this also goes into like what I just said about the dynamics of identity and how identities may evolve. But, this poem also made me consider, phrases and caricatures like Mammy, Jezebel, and Sapphire. There are people that have lived the lives that embody those terms. It's not all of us, but I do think it's important to also understand that, identity is going to encompass a lot of different, like people, a lot of different things. So I just think, it made me think, okay, I have like a visceral response to the idea of Mammy, but also we do have like our ancestors who were maybe, caretakers or who worked in homes or in domestic jobs. And what does that mean for my identity, my idea of representation and considering like where we've come from? Next, we have Love Jones. I watched Love Jones for the first time in February. I had never seen the movie. And I feel like Nia Long's character was one of the most interesting ways that I've seen Black women on screen because she felt like such a real person. And my only takeaway from this movie is number one, I think everyone should watch it. And number two, it made me raise my standards for the way Black women are portrayed on TV because there are people, and I'm not saying this movie is perfect. There are a lot of crazy things in this movie, in my opinion. I think it's crazy the way she lets some of these men talk to her. But I just have to put that out there. But anyways, I do think it is okay to have standards for what representation is, especially in media. And this is another thing I forgot to say in the hook, I mean, in the beginning about like representation and different conversations that have brought me to this topic. Captain Durag trending, and the person who like wrote this story having controversial forms of media out as their work. Like it made me think, okay, like are we still in an era where getting your foot in the door and producing something with a Black name or face on it is important? And I'm like, no, like it's 2026. We can be more careful with the ways that we portray ourselves and the ways that we engage with different media content as Black people. So I say this to say this movie like made me really affirmed in the standards that I have for the movies that I watch and the films and TV that and any form of media that I engage with. And finally, we have this sculpture, which I took a photograph of outside of the Baltimore Museum of Art. And this is a sculpture of a mermaid, and she has Black features and like Bantu knots. And when I looked at this, like I was so drawn, and I was just staring at it because I was like, wow, like this feels like such a mythical, divine representation of a Black woman that you don't really see often. And like it made me even more interested in expanding the boundaries that, we are presented in because we should see ourselves as like mermaids. We should see ourselves as doctors. We should see ourselves as scientists, things like that. Like we should not have boundaries on the ways that we're presented because it's something that sparks just such positive imagination. And if you watch my other video about imagination, you will know how passionate I am about just continuing the imaginative spirit of our people because that in itself can like birth change and revolutions or even just positivity in everyday life. So the takeaways that I have for this episode are as follows. Number one, reclamation and revision of these stereotypes may not be received in the way that I'm aiming for. People may still use the new ways that we present ourselves and the new ways that we find ourselves in society and the new elements of culture that we introduce. People can still perceive them from a racist and sexist lens. And that is because those thought processes are based on them as people. Like, I can't control how other people feel about how I am. And when I'm taking steps to choose my identity and how I present myself and embracing an authentic presentation of myself to the world, I'm not hoping to necessarily focus on changing other people's minds because that's not what I'm worried about. What I'm hoping to do is expand what is seen by other Black women and young women and girls to empower their own self-expression and to empower self-esteem for them. So this is all about whose gaze I am, projecting towards. Number two, addressing issues and not conforming is a necessary step of becoming a full, respected, and valued identity in society. Okay, I have two translations today. Number one, deconstruction of identity and what each part of myself truly means to me. I was kind of turned on to that by Bell Hooks' statements in one of the pieces that I read for this. And wait, was that Bell Hooks? No, it was Jezebel, Mimi, and Sapphire and her girls. My apology. But that statement on deconstructing these stereotypes made me think, okay, I want to do a critical examination of myself. That doesn't mean I want to let go of parts of my identity. It doesn't mean I want to completely transform. It means I want to always be able to know who I am and what I am presenting. And as a 20-year-old, a lot of that has been shaped in childhood and adolescence by parents, by peers, by schools, education systems. And I'm now in a space where I can look at all this information and see how they have influenced me to become what I am now and use that as a direction towards what I want to further become. And number two, my biggest translation is that I want to really become an example of positive, impactful representation, which means I want to do things that directly, you know, target these systems that uphold patriarchy and racism for Black women. I want to be a representation of someone who really tries to dismantle systems and bring about impactful change, which is the type of representation that I think is really important. These are my threads for this video. Number one, what are the modern day stereotypes of Black women, and what will it feel like to not subscribe to always categorizing archetypes among our community, which is kind of a oxymoron statement because I am curious about, how Jezebel, Mammy, and Sapphire have transformed in the current time period into, other stereotypes. But I also think that we've reached a point where we understand that, we're not a monolith. That is something that has been said 100 times over, and I'm going to repeat it because there's so much diversity within the Black identity. And I think that diversity has stretched as people have moved across regions and pursued different fields and been in different spaces. So the other end of that is me thinking, okay, like we really don't have to categorize ourselves because who are we doing that for? You know? The second thread would be going kind of back to my translation about representation, but just becoming really interested in being someone who is a mentor to others. That would be my last thread. Thank you so much for watching this video. This series has been one really born from authentic curiosity, which is why the videos are not necessarily consistent. But I'm using this as sort of a pilot mini series for this YouTube as well. So I'm okay with however fast these come out. I just want to make sure that I'm staying true to what my goal is with it. So thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking around. Please subscribe if you are interested in hearing more about future personal studies and how I finish out this Ology of a Black Woman series, which I think has 2 more episodes left. So thanks and have a good rest of your day.